Why do people in some parts of America feel so left behind, so angry, and so profoundly misunderstood? What are the invisible forces of culture, history, and family that shape a person's destiny? In a world of loud political debates, we rarely get a chance to listen to the quiet, complicated, and often painful human stories that lie beneath the surface. J.D. Vance's controversial and massively influential memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, is one of those stories. This is not a political treatise or an economic analysis, though it touches on both. At its heart, it is a raw, personal, and deeply philosophical journey into the heart of one of America's most proud, patriotic, and troubled cultures, the white working class of Appalachia and the Rust Belt. Through the story of his own chaotic childhood and his improbable journey to the Ivy League, Vance attempts to write an elegy, a sad poem or song, for a way of life that is in crisis. Our goal here is not to debate the politics that have swirled around this book. Our goal is to do what we always do, to listen to the story, to understand the culture, and to explore the profound and universal questions it raises about family, trauma, and the elusive nature of the American dream. The blood-soaked hills of Kentucky. To understand the story of J.D. Vance, you first have to understand the story of his people. His family's roots run deep in the Appalachian Mountains of Kentucky, in a culture shaped for centuries by a specific group of immigrants, the Scots-Irish. Vance argues that you cannot understand the hillbilly mindset without understanding this heritage. He describes it as a culture of honor. It's a worldview defined by a fierce and almost fanatical loyalty to family, a deep and abiding distrust of outsiders and authority, and a quickness to respond to any perceived insult with aggression. For centuries, in the isolated and often lawless hills of Appalachia, your family and your reputation were the only things you could truly rely on for protection and survival. This bred a culture of people who were intensely proud, deeply patriotic, and incredibly tough. This cultural code is personified by Vance's grandparents, Mama and Papa. They are the magnetic, chaotic, and ultimately heroic center of his story. After a fight where a man insulted his family's honor, Papa once calmly went home, got his gun, and told his wife Mama that he was going to go kill the man. It was Mama who had to talk him down. This wasn't seen as an act of insanity, it was seen as a defense of honor. This culture of honor has a noble side. It creates a powerful sense of community and loyalty. But Vance is unflinchingly honest about its dark side. It can lead to a cycle of violence, a refusal to seek help from outsiders like doctors or therapists, and a deep-seated pessimism. A sense that you shouldn't get your hopes up because the world is rigged against you anyway. This ancient cultural software forged in the hills of Kentucky is the operating system running in the background of his entire life. And it's a system that is both a source of immense strength and profound struggle. The Rust Belt Blues. Like millions of other Appalachians in the mid-20th century, Vance's grandparents left the poverty of the Kentucky hills in search of a better life. They followed the hillbilly highway north to the booming industrial towns of the Rust Belt. For his family, that town was Middletown, Ohio, home to a massive steel mill that offered good, steady middle-class jobs. For a generation, the American dream worked. Papa got a job at the steel mill, and despite his heavy drinking and the often violent chaos of their marriage, he and Mama were able to provide a stable middle-class life for their children. They bought a house. They had security. They had moved up in the world. But this prosperity was tragically short-lived. In the latter part of the 20th century, the forces of globalization and deindustrialization hit towns like Middletown like a sledgehammer. The steel mills and the factories began to close. The good, steady jobs that had been the bedrock of the community for generations disappeared, and they never came back. Vance argues that the loss was more than just economic. It was a profound psychological and spiritual blow. An entire way of life vanished. The sense of purpose, of pride in hard work, and of community that had been built around these industries crumbled. What was left was a deep sense of betrayal and a pervasive feeling of learned helplessness. The story of the Rust Belt, in Vance's telling, is the story of a culture that lost its economic reason for being, leading to a downward spiral of unemployment, poverty, and social decay. It is into this world of economic collapse and cultural crisis that J.D. Vance himself is born. A Childhood in Chaos. The heart of Hillbilly Elegy is Vance's raw and unflinching memoir of his own traumatic childhood. If his grandparents' story was about the struggle to escape economic poverty, his story is about the struggle to survive a deep and corrosive poverty of stability. His mother Bev is a brilliant and loving woman, but she is also a tragic figure, haunted by the demons of her own past and unable to escape the cycle of chaos. She becomes a registered nurse, a sign of upward mobility, but her personal life is a wreck. She cycles through a series of husbands and boyfriends, dragging JD and his sister through a constant state of turmoil. The home is never a place of peace. It is a place of screaming fights, of instability, of a revolving door of temporary father figures. This instability soon descends into the nightmare of addiction. His mother becomes addicted to prescription painkillers, and later, to heroin. Vance's childhood becomes a series of terrifying and heartbreaking moments. He describes his mother threatening to crash the car and kill them both. He describes her trying to take her own life. He describes having to give the police a clean urine sample so she could pass a drug test and keep her nursing license. He frames this personal story within a broader psychological context. He talks about adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, a term researchers use for the traumatic events in a child's life, like abuse, neglect, and parental addiction. The more ACEs a child has, the more likely they are to suffer from a host of problems later in life, from depression, to addiction, to heart disease. Vance realizes that his own life, and the lives of so many children around him in his community, were a textbook case of ACEs. The chaos and trauma were not just a personal problem, they were a cultural epidemic, a legacy of economic collapse and generational pain being passed down from parents to children. The saving grace of Mama. In this sea of chaos, Vance had two life rafts, his grandparents. Papa, who eventually quit drinking and became a source of quiet, steady wisdom, and most importantly, Mama. Mama is the ferocious, profane, and fiercely loving hero of this story. She is a force of nature, she chain smokes, she curses like a sailor, she is not afraid to use her fists, and she once threatened to run over a store manager with her car for being rude. She is the living, breathing embodiment of the hillbilly culture of honor, and she loves her grandson with a loyalty so fierce it is almost terrifying. As his mother's life spirals deeper into addiction, Mama and Papa become the only source of stability in J.D.'s life. Eventually, Mama essentially forces JD to move in with her, away from his mother's chaotic home, and this single act saves his life. Mama's house is not a gentle, nurturing place, it is a place of tough love and high expectations. When JD starts slacking off in school, she calls him a lazy asshole and forces him to do his homework. She tells him to never give up, to never make excuses. She is the one who breaks the cultural pattern of learned helplessness. She is a foul-mouthed, chain-smoking angel who, through sheer force of will, provides the structure, the discipline, and the unconditional love that he so desperately needed. She is the one who tells him, over and over again, that he is smart, that he is capable, and that he is destined for a better life than the one he was born into. Her unwavering belief in him becomes the foundation upon which he can finally begin to build a future. The escape velocity of a new world. With Mama's fierce support as his launchpad, Vance begins his journey out. He calls it achieving escape velocity. The first stage of his rocket is the United States Marine Corps. The Marines provide him with the discipline, the structure, and the sense of purpose that his life had been missing. For the first time, he is surrounded by a culture of high expectations and personal responsibility. It's in the Marines that he learns the basic life skills that many of his peers from middle-class homes already took for granted, like how to manage his money and how to stay in shape. After the Marines, he makes his way to The Ohio State University, and then improbably, to Yale Law School. This is the final stage of his escape, and it is a journey into a completely different world, a different country almost. At Yale, he is suddenly surrounded by the children of the nation's elite, and he experiences a profound and disorienting culture shock. He describes the feeling of being an alien, a stranger in a strange land. He doesn't understand the unspoken rules of this new elite world. He doesn't know what kind of wine to order at a fancy dinner, or how to network at a corporate law firm's recruitment event. His classmates talk about vacationing in the Swiss Alps. He spent his summers hauling trash. This experience gives him a unique perspective on the class divide in America. He realizes that upward mobility is not just about getting good grades or having a strong work ethic. It is also about learning a whole new set of cultural codes, a new way of talking, of dressing, of being in the world. He feels caught between two worlds, no longer fully a part of the hillbilly culture he came from, but not yet fully a part of the elite world he now inhabits. This feeling of being an outsider, a translator between two different Americas, is what gives his story its unique power and insight. The ultimate message of Hillbilly Elegy is that there are no easy answers. Vance does not pretend to have a simple solution for the deep-seated problems of his community. He acknowledges the powerful systemic forces, the economic collapse, the lack of opportunity that have devastated the region, but he also insists on the importance of personal agency and cultural change. He argues that his people must take responsibility for their own choices and confront the cultural demons of addiction, fatalism, and a reflexive distrust of education. The book is a complex, loving, and deeply critical portrait of a family and a culture in crisis. It is a story that challenges us to look beyond the easy political headlines and to see the complex, often painful human reality of a forgotten corner of America. It is a profound inquiry into the tangled web of culture, class, and personal choice that shapes all of our lives. If you believe that understanding is the first step towards empathy, then you are in the right place. Welcome to Geeky Philosopher. Subscribe and let's continue to explore the deep and complicated stories that make us who we are.